Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sarvaviriyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyane Nidatam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadguru Brahma Vidvaram. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvamanusangadhami Bhagavad-gite Bhavadveshini Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Sunvanti Divyastadai Vedai Sangapada-kramo Upanishadai Gayanti Yam Samadaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Yoginaha Yasyam Tam Na Vidusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So yesterday we saw 3 different types of visions of the Lord: Yoga Darshan, Vibhuti Darshan and Tattva Darshan. Now Arjun very humbly he asks the Lord to show to him the various manifestations or various vibhutis of the Lord, so that he can meditate on those and through that tune up with the Lord. So here in the 16th verse he says, Vaktum arhasya sheshena divya yatma vibhutayaha. Please tell me about your glories, about your vibhuti, without leaving out anything. Asheshena, meaning completely. Yabhir vibhuti vir lokan imam stvam vyatya tishtasi. That how do you pervade this entire world? Through all this what is there, please tell me about your glories all around in this world. And next verse is a very beautiful one where he says, we chant that verse, number 17, Katham vidyamaham yogin Tvam sada parichintayan Keshu keshu cha bhaveshu Chindyosi bhagavan maya. So he says, Katham vidyamaham yogin. How do I know, O yogin? Here he is calling Shri Krishna as a yogi. Tvam sada parichintayan. That how can I meditate on you constantly, think about you constantly. And keshu keshu cha bhaveshu. In what ways should I think? Because if you are all pervasive everywhere, for me to associate is not very easy. So tell me the ways in which I can associate with you. As we said yesterday, the mind and intellect want some glorious manifestation to hold on to, and then it will surrender. So just the idea that Bhagavan is all pervasive is not sufficient. For people like Prahlad, that is enough. That he could see the Lord everywhere. So when Hiranyakashipu asked, is he in the pillar also? He said, yes, he is there. But that's an exalted state. How to reach that state? At least some special manifestation. So there's keshu keshu cha bhaveshu. That word is used is bhav. So it is not just seeing a manifestation. What is the bhav that we feel? So if I see the Himalaya, it's not just the mountain and the beauty of nature that I see. If I see the beauty of nature and the mountain, then I am having Jagat Darshan. I am not having Vibhuti Darshan. But if that mountain reminds me of the glory of the Lord, this is one aspect of the glory of the Lord, then that bhav is Ishwar bhav. And that bhav is Bhakti bhav. And hence he says, Keshu Keshu cha bhaveshu. What are the various bhavs which will arise in our mind? You please tell us about that. Chintyosi Bhagavan Maya. And not only I see the vibhuti, but the bhav that should come. Give me that vision. To see all these as your manifestation and not as something which is just nature or something which is just something of a part of the creation. That is a glorious creation. But this is glorious because of the presence of the Lord in that. So now he says this Vistarena Atmano Yogam, 18th verse, he says Vibhutinta Janardhana. Elaborately you tell me about your yoga and about your vibhuti. Bhuya Kathe Triptirhi, and keep telling that to me till I feel content. Shrunvato Nasti Me Mritam. And he says that your glories are so infinite that I keep listening more and more and more. It will only bring more and more delight and joy. So till I feel it is very less, I feel it is very unsatisfying that way, because your glories are so infinite and how much ever is described is very small. So keep describing it. And that's the bhav of a devotee. That the devotee will always want to keep listening about the glories of the Lord, because glories of the Lord are not limited, because Bhagavan himself is unlimited. And why he does what he does, very difficult to understand. The only way to understand is to tune up to that Lord. And so he says, now you please explain. Now first thing that Bhagavan tells him is, you are asking me to describe all my glories, but it is not possible to describe. So in the 19th one he says, Hantate kathayishyami divya jatma vibhutaya. That I will tell you what are the glories. What are my vibhutis, I will explain to you. But pradhanyata, only the main ones I can explain to you. It is not possible to explain all, because there are so many. And that's why in this chapter we will find some 80 plus examples which are given. Because if Bhagavan starts explaining all his manifestations, it will just be endless. You just think about it. Vishnu Sahasranam. There are only 1,000 names of Bhagavan. Those 1,000 names of Bhagavan only to understand, not easy. He started explaining all his glories. So he says, Pradhanyata. I will explain to you some of the main ones. Pradhanyata Kurushreshta na asti anta vistarasya me. Because there is no end to my glories. Now somebody may say, see, Bhagavan is so egoistic, and he tells us that, give up all the ego. And he is only saying, my glories are endless and I can only tell you one little bit. He is not talking out of ego, that's his nature. Infinity is his nature. Ego is identifying with the limited. I have pride, that is ego. And out of that I keep boasting. This is infinite. If sun says that I am the source of all light, is that ego? That's the nature of the sun. The nature of sun is heat and light. That's not ego. But if sun says, I alone am the source of all light in this entire cosmos, there is nobody else like me, then there is. Again the example there has a limitation, because sun is finite. There will be no other example to compare with the Lord, because Bhagavan is infinite. So if Bhagavan says that, prostrate to me, remember me, surrender to me, and I will tell you all my glories, and my glories are infinite, it is not out of ego. That is the statement of a fact, that it is Bhagavan is infinite. So now he starts. So now we will have, suppose you go to a new place. Now I find out what is the latest destination, that is Spain. People are going to Spain. So if you go to Spain, there are different ways by which you can see that place. How? So you have a tour guide, and that tour guide can take you to small lanes and introduce you to the way of living of people, the shops and the food and the manners and customs and all that. Or that tour guide can take you to the main sightseeing places and take you to that Tomatino festival and throw tomatoes on each other. I don't know why they throw so many tomatoes on each other. And in India we cry sometimes, "Arey, tomato ka bhav bad gaya." And they throw tomato. So anyway, you go main places. That is one way to look at it. And then the third way to look at it is sit in your house and see a video of Spain. "Arey, this Spain is so nice." And ask somebody who has visited that Spain, how was it? All the three methods are possible. So Bhagavan here, what do you think Bhagavan is going to do here now? The second method is what he is going to follow. So we are going to have a divine tour of this whole creation. So Bhagavan is our tour guide. Now he is going to say these are all the main places, important ones. So now he will explain to us all his glories. Now remember one thing here, that we have to see this as a manifestation of the Lord. Each manifestation has its own special qualities. There is no doubt in that. But that special quality of that manifestation comes from Bhagavan. That one should not forget. Because we are such that we get so caught up in the manifestation and the glory of the manifestation that we forget the glory of the one who created that. Even in our life you will see that. No? So if somebody gives food to us, we say thank you. But we never say thank you to Bhagavan who gave us the capacity to chew it, swallow it, digest it, circulate, assimilate. That is the glory of Bhagavan. That is forgotten. So one should not forget that. The manifestations are divine. That speciality in that manifestations come from the Lord. And so each of these must relate me to the Lord. So now let us see one by one. Today and tomorrow, as many we can see, we will see. This 20th verse is one of the most crucial verses. Simple verse, nothing new which is said in it, but Ramana Maharshi made a collection of important verses of the Gita. And some 11 or 16, some number he chose. And in that, this is one of the verses. And then, when he was asked that out of these also, which is the most important one, 16, he said, this is the most important one. So, according to Ramana Maharshi, this verse. Not that other verses have not revealed this truth. This truth what is revealed here is the same. We know it before also. But from his standpoint, if there is one shloka of the Gita which must be chosen, it is this shloka. So what does he say? Aham atma gudakesha sarvabhutashaya sthitaha aham adishcha madhyam cha bhutanamanta eva cha. So here he said, Aham Atma. This self is my special manifestation in each and every being. Aham Atma Gudakesha. Gudakesha is a very nice name. If you want to name any child, you can name Gudakesh. Actually the name is nice. Today people may not name. They will want German name, Hebrew name, something they will choose. And you have to ask, what does this mean? Then they say, this means this, Oh wow, very good. But Gudakesha I can't name. What is Gudakesha? Many meanings it has. Gudakesha, Gudaka and Isha. Gudaka means sleep. Gudaka means sleep. And Isha means the Lord. Meaning somebody who has mastered, controlled sleep. Arjun's name is that because he used to practice archery day and night and he had mastered sleep. Imagine what a great achievement that is if we can learn to master sleep. Life only will come into control straight away. I learn to master sleep. No laziness, no procrastination, nothing. One secret of time management. I told earlier also. If you wake up and get up at the same time, you will never procrastinate in life. You think. But if I get up after I have woken up, after a gap, in my life there will be procrastination. Now one meaning is this, Gudakesha, master of sleep. In Vedanta, sleep means ignorance. When I don't know who I am, that is called Ajnana Nidra. I am sleeping. I don't know who am I. I am living in the world, doing so many things, but asleep to the self. Not that Arjuna has awakened himself to that self, but the usage is very nice because Aham Atma, whoever knows that Atma is actually awake, and whoever doesn't know that Atma is asleep. So Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthita. What is that Atma? That Atma is the substratum of all the beings. Sarva Bhutashaya Sthita. Where is it? In the heart of all beings. Heart meaning, when I withdraw my attention from body, mind, intellect, vasanas, ignorance, as my very true nature is the Atma. Sat Chit Anand is my true nature. And that is the true nature of all the beings in this world. It is Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthita. Aham Adischa Madhyamcha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. And what is that Atma? That Atma is not different in all of us. That Atma is one which is infinite, in which all the beings are born, they stay and they go back. Which means that this Atma is that Brahman. Because the definition of Brahman is this, from which the whole creation arises, in which it stays, in which it goes back. So why Ramana Maharshi said this is the most important verse? Because in this one verse is the oneness of the Atma and Brahman. In this one verse is the whole spiritual sadhana also given to us. That right now we are asleep, we need to awaken ourselves to what? To that Atma. That who is that I, the real I. Today I know only I associated with body, mind and intellect. The real I don't know. So I am asleep to that real I. I have to awaken. So in all of us, the Atma is the self. And that Atma is a manifestation of Bhagavan. So this is the first one. Even if you take this, in the world outside, the beings are born, they stay, they go back in that Supreme Self only, which is the substratum of the world. Like all the waves are born in the ocean, stay in the ocean, go back to the ocean. Same way inside, in our own personality, it is the same consciousness in which the thoughts arise, they stay and they fall. That consciousness is the Atma. And that same consciousness is outside also, as the cause of this whole universe. And so, whoever can see that this entire thing is actually a play of consciousness, that person has become free. Just like the wave. One can see that waves are rising in the ocean, staying in the ocean and falling into the ocean. That is to understand that the ocean is the substratum. But when I am actually seeing the wave, then what am I seeing? I am only seeing water. The entire ocean is a play of what? Only water. All the waves are nothing but water. One wave is also water, all other waves are also water. Wave is only a functional identity. Big wave, small wave, only functional identity. Same way, all of us have a functional identity, Mr. So and so. But we all are manifestations of one consciousness only. So if you imagine consciousness as one huge ocean, all of us are the waves. Each of us is actually what? Only consciousness, nothing other than consciousness. Person who understands that will realize that there is no need for sorrow at all in life. Because all of us are that pure consciousness. We all are divine. So this is one. The one who knows this self and that consciousness, that is the manifestation of Bhagavan. Now he goes on to give other manifestations in the world outside. Internally he already explained, the best in me is the consciousness, and that is the manifestation of the Lord. Now you see what else he says. I am not going to read each and every verse, but we will go through quickly as many as we can. So in the 21st verse, he gives us the glories of nature. Some of the glories he points out. Glories from nature. So Adityana Maham Vishnuhu. So Aditi's sons are called as Aditya. There are 12 Adityas. And these 12 Adityas, of all these 12 Adityas, so these 12 Adityas are related to the 12 months also. They are the presiding deities of the 12 months. Amongst them, there is one of the Adityas is called as Vishnu. This is not Bhagavan Vishnu. It's a presiding deity called Vishnu. So he says, among the Adityas, I am the Vishnu. And it is these Adityas which govern these 12 months. So the time, the concept of time. Says see now this manifestation that he is going to give, because he is speaking to Arjun, he is going to use the examples which Arjun is familiar with. During the Vedic times, they are very familiar with the concept of presiding deities. And they do the yajna, they invoke the deity and then they seek the blessing and all that. It is Adityana Maham Vishnu, Jyotisham Raviram Shuman. Among the luminaries, I am the sun. Today we all know that because sun is there, life is there. Because of sun, the moon is also having its reflected light. And so among the luminaries, I am the sun. Marichi Marutam Asmi. Among the wind. Now wind also has, different deities. So there's a deity for storm, there's a deity for cyclone, there's a deity for typhoon, like that, different deities. So among those deities of the wind, he says, I am Marichi. If you read Gurudev's commentary, he has given elaborate details beautifully. That what is this Marichi? So he is given here that Rig Veda mentions that Marichi is the chief amongst all the deities associated with the wind. So Marichi Marutam Asmi, Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. And of the asterisms, I am the moon. Literally the word nakshatra means, we translate it as planet. But one of the other meanings of that is what a Gurudev has written, asterism, meaning it's not a planet, but it is, what do they call in astronomy?
Constellation.
No. Constellation is Aries and all that.
Nakshatra.
Like Jupiter has so many moons. Satellites. Yeah. So he says, amongst all the satellites, I am the moon. Just think about it. Is it not true that all the satellites of all the different planets, they are called moon only? Even science calls it moon only. Jupiter has how many? 12 moons?
They keep finding more.
Now they keep finding more and more. Now they found one Earth-like thing also. Kepler it is called, Kepler. So, anyway, the point is that amongst all the satellites, I am the moon. Then he says, Vedanam Samavedosmi. Amongst the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Now, what is the speciality of Samaveda? Many beautiful points in that. Actually, Rig Veda is supposed to be the oldest historically. But that is very limited. Because we believe that Veda has no beginning and no end. Because Veda is not a book of knowledge. Veda is knowledge itself. So anyway, historically it is Rig Veda. But why here is a Sama Veda? One is that Sama Veda is very, very musical. And different meters in which it is written. So it has been glorified. Sama Veda has been glorified. That's why you see even in our mantra shloka that we chant in the beginning of the class, Yam Brahma Varunendra, in that Samagaha is a word. Gayanti Yam Samagaha. The singers of Samaveda. One is that the Samaveda is very musical. Second is that this Samaveda has this Chandogya Upanishad. And in that Chandogya Upanishad is the Mahavakya called Tat Tvam Asi. That's the essence of the Vedic knowledge. No doubt there are other Upanishads. In each of them there is one Mahavakya. But of all the Mahavakyas, the most prominent one is Tat Tvam Asi. And so amongst the Vedas it is Samaveda. Because only because it is musical it can't be great. It is great because to write that in that meter is not very easy. It shows the skill also. Skill of music, skill of poetry, many things. But more important is this, that Samaveda has the Chandogya Upanishad, Tattvamasi. So the oneness of individual and the Brahman, the Jiva and Brahman, is indicated in the Tattvamasi. So Vedanam Samavedosmi, Devanam Asmi Vasavaha. Amongst the Devatas, I am the Indra. Indra is supposed to be the king of Devatas. Many times one feels, why this Indra? He is always jealous, this Indra is. Any rishi is meditating, the fellows become insecure. That is only to show to us that even if you become the king of the heavens, you will still remain a mortal being only. So why are you striving for that? In philosophy, the word Indra is very nice. Why? Because Indra means idam drashta iti indraha. The witness of all that which is seen is called as Indra, which means I, the seer. The real I is actually the Indra, who witnesses everything else, who doesn't get witnessed. The seer who never becomes the seen, the ultimate seer, the Sakshi in us, that is the Indra. That is in Vedanta. Here he is not talking about Vedanta, here he is talking about that presiding deity called Indra. He says Devanam Asmi Vasava. Indriyanam Manaschasmi. Among the senses I am the mind. How can the senses be the mind? Because remember, the senses are also external and internal. External senses are the 10 senses of knowledge and action. Mind is called Antakarana. It is the inner sense. Because only that mind coordinates all the other inputs of the senses and presents one picture. Eye can only see, ear can only hear. But if I am able to get a complete picture right now, it's because the mind is there. And that mind coordinates all that, presents it to the buddhi. So then we know, okay, this is the full picture. And so mind also is an internal sense organ. It is called Antakarana. Bahishkarana is the 10 external sense organs. So Indriyanam Manaschasmi. Bhutanam Asmi Chetana. And amongst the living beings, Chetana word here means the intelligence. It doesn't mean consciousness. Chetana here means the intelligence. The intelligence in the beings is the presence of the Lord. Just think about it. How much intelligence is there in this whole creation? How that spider weaves the web. How that bird builds the nest. Such amazing intelligence. And they don't go to any school or anything. They have that innate intelligence. They know this is the enemy, this is not the enemy. From whom to run, from whom not to run. And they can feel so many things. I think the crocodile or some of the reptiles or whales. Whales, they will understand when there is going to be a earthquake. They have those perceptions. But it is all pre-programmed. So that intelligence is the intelligence of the Lord. So one may watch it as the glory of the whale, or one may watch it as the glory of Bhagavan, because of whom this is there. Devotee will only connect that to the Lord. Because by itself, how did it come? It doesn't come from nothing. That intelligence is the Lord. Then he says, Rudranam Shankaras Chasmi. Among the Rudras, I am Shankara. So Rudra is the deities related to destruction. And there are 11 Rudras. Different types of destruction that happen in the world. If you read the Vedic literature, it's very amazing that what all they have written in that. And we sometimes feel we are only rediscovering all that again. So different forms of destruction are given. And each of them is associated with one deity, Rudra. Literally, Rodayati iti Rudra, one who makes you cry, is called as a Rudra. So, Bhagavan Shivji, when he gets angry, then he does Rudra Tandav. So one of the names of Shivji also is Rudra. But here, it is not that Rudra, not Shivji Rudra. The deities are called Rudras. They are in charge of different aspects of destruction. Among that, there is one deity called Shankara. So very beautiful is Shankara, because what is the meaning of Shankara? Sham karoti iti Shankara. One who brings auspiciousness is Shankara. We may say, what is this? How will destruction bring auspiciousness? So there are two types of destruction. One is called destructive destruction, other is called constructive destruction. Constructive destruction is inevitable. Till the seed doesn't die, the sapling will not be born. Till the flower doesn't die, the fruit will not be born. So destruction and construction, they go together actually. They are not one after the other. Even right now, there is constant destruction that is happening, constant construction that is happening. Every minute, every second, in the body, outside, everywhere. So that deity who brings about a constructive destruction, that is called, those deities are called Rudra. And amongst them, he says, I am that Shankara. Meaning, even in the most destructive moment, if I can see the glory of the Lord, that is a devotee. Difficult, but that is possible. The tsunami, suppose you are, that tsunami which comes, massive. And if you happen to be on the beach that time, the most glorious sight you will see of Bhagavan is that tsunami in the ocean. And one can be scared looking at it. Or one can say, this is glory of Bhagavan, and surrender. Gone. Both choices are there. But the devotee will do that. Accept it. This is the glory of Bhagavan only. In destruction also the devotee sees Bhagavan only. That's why Prahlad had no fear at all. His father did what all he did to him, threw him from the mountain, drowned him into the ocean, made him sit on that fire. No problem. If it has to happen, it will happen. I am seeing Bhagavan only in that also. Those are heights of devotion. Even in destruction, one can see the glory of the Lord. So, Rudranam Shankaras Chasmi. Vittesho Yaksha Rakshasam. Amongst those who are the Yakshas and Rakshasas, I am Kuber, he says. Gurudev's commentary on this is worth reading. I just read one paragraph here, what he says. He says the chancellor of the exchequer in the heavens, described in the Puranas as Kubera, is a monstrous, ugly creature, 3-footed, fat and short, with a spreading belly, a small head, and 8 protruding teeth. This divine cashier is helped by Yakshas and Rakshasas, an equally ugly, materialistic, heartless breed in protecting his treasures. Imagine Kuber like that. But if you see the picture of Kuber, it is like that. The deity of wealth is like that. What we would have thought, he must be in some limousine and nothing. How is depicted in this Puranas? And Gurudev gives the symbolism of that. It is interesting to note how the Indian rishis were typically against capitalism and how they cartooned the master of wealth in such a grotesque caricature, so ugly that it cannot bring about even an indulgent smile on our lips. If you look at that Kuber, that's the description of Kuber in the Veda. You see what they show in the movie and all, or the serial and all that, that is very different. They will show nicely with one mukut and this and that. But otherwise the description in the Veda is like this. So now he gives a little bit of explanation on that. He says, is the extension at his belt an unavoidable symptom of his hoarded wealth? Is the third leg only a substantial walking stick without which the rich fat keeper of wealth cannot drag himself from his money bags to his dining table? Are the rest of the 24 teeth worn out by his overeating? Nowhere you have this kind of a description. I have read so many commentaries on this 10th chapter. But Gurudev is so unique in his description. How he writes that here. Why this Kuber is described like this? To make a human being aware that why are you so crazy about wealth? It has a functional utility in life, keep it for it. That's all. But people do Kuber Puja, Lakshmi Puja, this, that, everything. So here he says, Vittesho Yaksha Rakshasam. And who are the helpers of Kuber? Yakshas and Rakshasas. They are the helpers of Kuber. Vasunam Pavakas Chasmi. So he says, among the Vasus, I am the Pavaka, meaning I am the Agni. So there are 8 Vasus, and these 8 Vasus, they are related to the season. Again, this commentary of Gurudev is fabulous. How many seasons are there? I'm not asking how many we experience. Totally how many seasons are there? 6 seasons are there. What are they? Spring, summer, winter, autumn, rain, and one more. In English I don't know what is the name, but in Sanskrit we have the differentiation between Grishma and Shishir. And what is in English? Fall. Fall is same as autumn, no? Fall and autumn are same. Summer, winter, autumn, spring, rain, one more. You find out and come tomorrow. There are 6 seasons. But Vasus are 8. Each of them is related to one season. Why is it that 8 Vasus are there? Gurudev has explained in his commentary. He says seasons may be 6 outside, but there are 2 in the mind, that is happiness and sorrow. Whatever may be the season outside, but if your mind is not happy, you will be miserable. And if your mind is happy, outside may be autumn, but you are happy. Outside may be rain, but you are happy. Don't we see that? Most of the time our mental climate only is gone. We keep on waiting, When that season is there, when it is not there, we wait for it. It's too much, winter is extending so much, pata nahi kitna aur chalte jaye. Now the summer has come. So hot now, it started becoming hot now. The mental climate is what is going to make me experience Externally there is something going on. So 6 plus 2, 8 seasons. And these are 8 Vasus. And do you know that Bhishma was one of the Vasus? So that Shantanu's children, that Gangaji took and put them in the Ganga, no? They all were Vasus who were cursed. I forgot what was the incident, but they were cursed and they were to be born on the earth. But they sought forgiveness and they said, please forgive us and all that. So that Rishi said that the main person who caused this whole trouble, you will have to live for a long time. But the others will just go, get born and again come back to their original state as a Vasu. That's why that Gangaji took all the 7 and put them in the water. And the 8th one was Bhishma. Now what a life he had to live, Bhagavad. Terrible he lived. Very value oriented, but so much of suffering in his life. So now that is the Vasu. So 8 Vasus. So amongst those Vasus, again the name of the Vasu is Agni. It is not Agni Devata. The name of the Vasu. So it is Vasavanam Pavakaschasmi. Pavaka is a name. So Agni is. Pavaka literally means that which burns. So Agni, fire. Meru Shikharinamaham. And amongst the mountains, I am the Meru. Not mountains. Mountain peaks. Shikhar. So among the mountain peaks, I am the Meru. So in the Puranas, the Meru is supposed to be the center of earth. The tallest mountain. Supposed to be the center of the earth. And what is given here? Altitude is supposed to be 7 to 8,000 miles. The center of the earth. And Ganga is supposed to be flowing from there into all directions. And there are 7 continents below that. That's the description in the Puranas. Gurudev has given a very nice symbolic meaning for that. What he says here is, we would rather believe it to be a mystical phraseology representing some special field of influence having its base in the Jambudvip. Jambudvip is this, India. Not India, Asia, sorry. Jambudvip. If you take Puja Sankalpa, in that it comes. Jambudvipe, Bharatavarshe, Bharatakhande, Meroho, Dakshine Parshe. So this India is supposed to be the south-west, Dakshine Parshe. Not southwest, south. It's behind this Meru mountain. Towards the south, it's supposed to be India. So he says, it is a field of influence rising up to the peak described above, from where spiritual knowledge flows out in all 4 sides to bless all the islands. So it is not a geographical mountain that way, or it could have been also, because we don't know. Vedic times are many thousands of years ago, and we know that how these continents were not what they are today. They were all different, and then that European and this Asian and all that is collided, and this Himalayas are formed, and all that has happened. So we don't know at that time really it was a geographical mountain also that way. But otherwise it is a field of influence where, meaning the best, the highest, from where the spirit, which is the peak of spiritual achievement, that is represented as Meru. From where you see only oneness, that peak of spiritual realization is called as Meru. So even in a mala, if you see, there is a bead which is called as the Meru. So this bead is called as the Meru. And you will never cross that Meru. When you finish the mala, when you come to the last bead, you have to turn the mala. Again the last bead will become the first bead. So that Meru is symbolic of the Supreme Self or the Supreme Lord, and nobody is greater than that. So that way the peak Meru also is a symbol of the highest achievement, which is Supreme Oneness. Then he says, Purodhasam cha mukhyam mam Vidhipata Brihaspati. Amongst the priests, I am the Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the guru of Indra, Devatas. Guru Rasamcha Mukhyam Mam Vidhipata Brihaspati. Senaninam Aham Skandaha. Amongst the commander-in-chief, I am Skanda. Skanda means Kartikeya. This Kartikeya was appointed as the commander-in-chief by Bhagavan Shivji to kill this Asura, Tarakasura. So the divine commander of the army of the Devatas. So he says, amongst the generals or commander-in-chief, I am the Skanda. And then he says, Sarasam Asmi Sagaraha. Amongst the lakes, I am the ocean. And one wonders, what is this? How can be among the lakes, I am the ocean? Because the point is, the lakes cannot exist without the ocean. Rivers, lakes, streams, rivulets, all that, the source of all that is ocean. Oceanic waters evaporate, get condensed and then fall somewhere, and that's how it is formed. It is amongst the lakes, I am the ocean. Maharshinam Bhriguraham. Amongst the rishis, Sapta rishis which are there, amongst them I am the Bhrigu Rishi. Giram Aham Asmi Eka Aksharam. Very nice this is. That in the syllables I am Om, Eka Aksharam. In speech, Giram is a speech. So Omkar, not only it has a lot of spiritual significance, but even speech-wise, Omkar has all the sound possibilities encapsulated in it. A is the first alphabet in the vowels, and Ma is the last alphabet in the class consonants. And between A and Ma, all the different sound possibilities get covered. So even in speech, he says, Giram Asmi Ekam Aksharam. I am that Omkar. And Omkar is not only the symbolizing the sound possibility, but Omkar also is a single syllable representing the absolute truth. So one can meditate on that Om as the Lord. Then he says very nicely, Yajnanam Japa Yajnosmi. Amongst the various yajnas, I am the Japa Yajna. Now this is the glory of Krishna. How he interprets this for the understanding of the people at that time. And it brings about a cultural revival. Yajna, otherwise people associate only with Havan, fire ritual. He says, among the yajnas, I am Japa Yajna. When we constantly do Japa, one name, one form, keep that in the mind and keep doing Japa, that single pointedness will burn away all the vikshepa of the mind, all the agitations of the mind, all the negativities of the mind. And that Japa has a lot of power. Because among the yajnas, I am that Japa Yajna. Today, if you see, in neuroscience, they call it as neurosculpting. What is neurosculpting? There are videos on Google if you go and see YouTube and all that. Neurosculpting. And they will tell you, neurosculpting means if you can keep one image in the mind and hold on to that image in your mind, your brain will literally rewire itself. The neurons in the brain will rewire themselves. And if you sustain that thought, that will manifest in your life. That is called neurosculpting. Where actually the neurons will change, and also that whatever you sustain in that mind will manifest outside. Now that our Vedantic people have been saying, Vedas have been saying for ages, saying you keep one form, keep one name and keep doing that japa. That will make your mind most powerful. Single pointedness of the mind comes through japa. And the mind which is trained in japa, Gurudev used to say, the mind which is trained in japa is like a pre-cooked food. tinned food, tinned food. I mean, it may not be very good to eat health-wise, but example limitation. That pre-cooked food, what you have to do? You have to only remove it, heat it and just eat. So you would say that the mind which is trained in japa is ready for consumption. Of what? Consumption that the ego will get destroyed in that. Little heat of contemplation, gone. That ego will get totally destroyed and that person is realized, one with the truth. So many great masters have realized sheerly on the practice of japa. There are enough intellectuals who can keep talking nonsense about it. They don't understand what the meaning of this is and they don't practice it. Because they don't practice it, they will keep on talking off their head. Those who do it, they know. If you read many intellectuals, J. Krishnamurti and all these people, they will say, why are you making your mind mechanical? Don't keep repeating the same thought. Mind should come into a spontaneous state. What is the point? He doesn't understand that by doing japa, one is not trying to make the mind mechanical. The bhav that comes along with that will make that mind so sublime and subtle that ego will surrender and then only you can come to spontaneous state. How can you be spontaneous when you are impulsive already? Impulse has to get controlled, come to single pointedness. From single pointedness only you can become spontaneous. So many masters have done japa. Gurudev used to do Om Namah Shivaya. Samarth Ramdas used to do Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Gandhiji used to do Ram. Kabir Das also used to do Ram. Akhandanandji Maharaj used to do Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. And they used to do not only japa, they used to do Purascharan. Long back I told you about Purascharan. Those of you who have been coming regularly. Purascharan means as many alphabets are there in that mantra, that many crore times you do japa, then that mantra is Siddha mantra. Swamiji, I'll choose Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 13 crore times one has to do that japa. But he did it. And he did it after doing Purascharan of Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra is 24 syllables. 24 crore times japa. Sheerly for the sake of experiencing what it is one should try it. And see what the mind will do. If you read Vivekananda's literature, he writes about the power of thought. And he said that your thoughts are so powerful that if you sustain the thoughts and you are sitting in a cave, the power of that thought can even blast a whole cave. We don't realize the power of thought because we don't tap only the power of thought. Today at least it is easy for us to believe when we know how we tap the power of the water which is flowing and derive such electricity out of it that massive machines are running because of that. That is the power of water. Same way solar power. What is the power of thought? And that too power of a thought which is made single pointed. Forget Vivekanandaji. Bruce Lee, he said, I am not scared of a fighter who knows 1,000 different kicks. But I am scared of a fighter who has practiced one kick 1,000 times. Because if that fellow uses that one kick, I am finished in that. I don't need to learn 1,000 different types of kicks. What is the power of single pointedness? Japa is that. Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. And one cannot imagine the evolution that gets speeded up. If you want to speed up the evolution, the simplest method is do japa. And you watch how the mind becomes single pointed. Beautifully it will become. And any time you can then bring the mind to that state. Not only that time of japa practice. Suppose you feel very angry. You can just start your japa and that anger will come into control straight away. The whole book that Eknath Easwaran wrote called Mantram Handbook. In that he has written, that whole handbook is actually very simple, it's only one point. But he has emphasized that point so many times in that, How to use mantra to get out of depression, how to use mantra to get out of anger, out of fear, out of anxiety, how to use the mantra to make the mind equanimous. So many things he has written in that. All using the power of mantra japa. He says, Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. So of all the different yajnas, he says, I am japa yajna. Very simple to practice. You don't require elaborate arrangements or nothing is required. If you want a mala, you can use a mala. But after a point in time, when you attain single pointedness, no need of a mala. Keep on doing that japa mentally. And that japa which becomes mental, slowly becomes what we call ajapa japa. That it will go on in the mind continuously throughout the day. One part will be doing that japa. Unbroken awareness one learns to maintain. So that japa has a lot of significance and power. And once one starts doing it, one will know the benefit. So put aside any intellectual skepticism or some vague notions about japa that this will make my mind dull, mechanic, nothing. It will awaken the latent powers of the mind. So yajnanam japa yajñosmi. Literally the word japa. I had done this in the 6th chapter, if you remember, when we did this whole meditation, and I taught that japa, and we did on Omkar japa also. Japa literally means that which will help a person to go beyond the cycle of birth and death. Janmanaha pati, that is called as japa. Jakaro janma vichedaha, pakaro papanashaka. It will destroy the agitations of the mind and it will take you beyond the cycle of birth and death. Yajnanam japa yajñosmi. Sthavaranam Himalaya. Amongst the motionless inert things, I am the Himalaya. Himalaya also is very powerful. Why? Because, again, not to see it only as a mountain which is an abode of ice. Literally it means, Him means ice. Alaya means abode. Abode of ice. That way there are many across the world, so many mountain ranges are there. But the speciality of the Himalayas is the tapas that the great masters have done that. So Himalaya is symbolic of austerity. Himalaya is symbol of solitude, of deep contemplation. And those inquiring minds who have asked the most fundamental questions of life, why am I here? Who am I? What is my true nature? How do I become immortal? Is there a way to go beyond sorrow permanently? Most fundamental questions of life, we can say that Himalayas are like the laboratories for the great scientific minds, which are the rishis, subjective scientists, to withdraw, conduct their experiments and discover the eternal truths. And what all is there in the Himalayas? Gangaji is also in the Himalayas. So many Tirthasthans are in the Himalayas. So for us, Himalaya is a symbol of spiritual knowledge, enlightenment, tapasya, inquiry, silence. What an amount of silence. Not ordinary silence it is. It's very, Gurudev used to say pregnant silence. Silence which can make the mind completely quiet. Because the entire mountain ranges are filled with so many different masters. Every morning there are so many masters, even today, who sit there and meditate. That's why it is said we must face the north and meditate. Because the rishis are facing the south. South is the direction of death. North is the direction of knowledge. Must face the north and meditate. So Himalayas have that way a lot of spiritual significance for us. So he says amongst the mountain, east or north, any of them.
Why do the rishis meditate facing the sun?
Because people who are who are scared of change and death, they run towards the north. Yama, or the deity of death, is the deity of south. So south is symbolic of death and change. And people who are seeking immortality or freedom or fearlessness, they move away from the south and they go towards the north. The rishis who have already realized the Supreme Self, they are not scared. So they sit in the north, facing the south. If the body has to drop, it will drop. Anyway, body has to drop one day. And so they meditate. So that people who are, wanting guidance, they can go there, seek the guidance. And that's why we generally put the altar in our puja room or wherever. Our altar is supposed to be either in the north or in the east or in the northeast. These are three nice places to put the altar. Because north is a symbol of knowledge for us. Uttara, even the direction we call as Uttara, means to rise higher in life. Uttara. In Hindi also you have Uttara and Uttama. Comparative also it is. Degree. So Uttara means to evolve, to rise higher. And knowledge helps me to evolve. So the direction of north is associated with knowledge. So Stavaranam Himalayah. Ashwatha Sarva Vrikshanam. Amongst the trees, I am the Ashwatha tree. The Ashwatha tree is a symbol of change. Because the literal meaning of Ashwatha means that which will not remain the same the next moment. Shvaha na tishtati iti Ashwatha. Shvaha means tomorrow or the next moment. So it's a constant symbol of change and samsara. So the 15th chapter, Kathopanishad, describes the whole samsara as a people tree. Ashwatha tree. Ashwatha Sarva Vrikshanam Devarshinam cha Naradaha. Among the great rishis, Devarshis, he says, I am Narad. Because Narad is a great bhakta of the Lord. Ananya bhakta of the Lord. Constantly thinking about Bhagavan. And generally we consider Narad only as somebody who is a very cunning person. In Gujarati also they have Narad Veda courage. Meaning he makes people fight. He is such a great bhakta and devotee of the Lord. Literally, Naram Dadatiti Naradaha. One who brings knowledge, self-knowledge and bhakti to us is called Narad. So Narad Bhakti Sutra is such a great composition. And if you see Naradji's life, so many devotees were united with Bhagavan because of Narad only. Ratnakar became Valmiki because of Narad. Dhruv was initiated into the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya by Narad only. So many like that. Naradji is not some, what is the word for it?
Mischief maker, Narad Muni.
He is not a mischief maker. He is not somebody who instigates people. In today's serials, you have no one person will be like that. Constantly instigating. I tell you this, some of these serials are terrible. Which are historical, but Abhay Ashok which is coming, very easy to write. No, this is not based on history, this is based on Lok Katha, this, that, and that one screen you put and then you put anything after that. The public who is seeing it, they will not understand. The small children, they will think this is what happened. None of that happened. Chanakya died before Ashok was even established on the throne. In the time of Bindusar only Chanakya died. And Radhagupta was his disciple. He made Ashok sit on that. And Chanakya never trained Ashok like how he trained Chandragupta. Now to what all they are showing. I actually started seeing Ashok thinking that they will show something proper because I want to know about Ashok. Hare Ram. I said, Jane to isko, useless it is. And I see on internet, I don't use cable. For me, that no time is there in any case. So, but Ashok, because from Ashok's time, invasions have started in our country. That man gave up his arms and so many kings they gave up and the invasions have started. So I said, let us see now what is this. Something only they are showing. I said, leave this now. How much instigation in that? Baap re baap. It's like a Bollywood drama only happening. One can't believe actually this happened How much happened, how much didn't happen, one doesn't know. So one thinks like that, Naraji is somebody who is instigating people. No. He is one who brings devotion into the lives of people. Gandharvanam Chitraratha Siddhanam Kapilo Munihi. Among the Gandharvas, I am Chitraratha. So Gandharvas are those who are celestial beings who are expert in music and dance. And amongst them, their king is Chitraratha. The Duryodhana misbehaved with Chitraratha and some of the Gandharvas, and they captured him. And Siddhanam Kapilo Munihi, amongst those who are Siddha. So Siddha means one who has reached the state of perfection. This is Kapil Muni. So this Kapil Muni is the founder of Sankhya philosophy. And he was an avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. And he himself gave the knowledge of the truth to his mother Devahuti. That portion is called Kapil Gita. And his place, Kapil Muni's place, is very, very close to Siddhvari ashram of ours. Siddhanam Kapilo Muni. There's a place, but very badly maintained. One feels so sad that what is this, such a great master and nothing is done. In our country actually, only on tourism one can thrive in this country. For the kind of places that we have, Buddha got enlightenment here, Mahavir here, so many great people, Kapil Muni, Krishna Bhagavan. If you go to that Vraj Bhumi and see what very sad state that whole place is in. How much of pollution, and it's just not maintained. Any of these places, once if they start maintaining, the amount of tourists who can come and who can generate economic this thing for us, so much. So that Kapil Muni's ashram is there. Very, very great master he was. More of these we will see tomorrow. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.